And now it's time for Church Chat.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Church Chat for this week, and welcome back from vacation, Father Jesse. It's
Thank
good to
you.
see you.
Well,
And
it's wonderful to be back.
yeah, and welcome, Jerry. I think this is your first appearance online since we started the online thing. So welcome to Church Chat.
Glad to
Um,
be.
yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you, Jerry, about how things are going with your personal situation. We've heard from Deb recently in church chat, but how are things going? How are things going for you in general?
My life is much the same in retirement, with the changes being thrust upon me by COVID, and we're all going through that. And one of the big changes in our lives, Deb and I, is the fact that we're very much missing our opportunity to see the grandchildren and our son and daughter-in-law. As you know, they're in North Carolina. And many of our parishioners are in the same situation. And my heart goes out to them, because I understand how they feel at this time. It's a hole that's being created in our hearts. And it's a difficult hole to fill. I know Deb is feeling it strongly, as I am. My situation at the golf course, I'm very proud of how responsible the owners and all the workers have been in providing an opportunity for people to find enjoyment other than just being in their homes. They have an opportunity to get out, enjoy the summertime, and be with friends in a social situation. Golf is a game where social distancing is a natural part of it. We very rarely are in the same place on the golf course at the same time.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting opportunity to experience some sort of community during this time, Jerry. Um, what kind of observations have you been making about maybe how things are different this year as compared with other years on the golf course, but maybe some unique things that are happening in terms of how that uh, how your work at the golf course is maybe a ministry in some respect.
Well, I've always taken it on myself as the starter to find out something about the people that come to the golf course, especially if I'm not sure who they are. I ask them if it's their first time there, and then I go about, if it is, I go about laying out all the details which will make their day as pleasant as possible. I also believe it's my role at this point to make sure that everyone's in a very positive frame as they approach the first tee. Golf's not an easy game to begin with. I think under COVID, when we have stressing that's outside, we don't always release that. So sometimes a little joke or a little smile or just I hope you have a nice day, I think that sets up people to have a better day. And so that's always been part and parcel of who I am anyway, but even more so under these conditions. And second to that, I'm the WHMIS rep. So I'm very concerned about staff and how they're doing. So I'm always asking them if they need anything, if they're, if there's something troubling them, if people are getting in their way. We've had a couple of outbursts on the golf course with, and I think it's related to the pandemic, where a couple of people have been, I would say it almost would be called harassment of the staff. And I talked to the individuals that were involved in all that and made sure that they were understood their rights as workers. So it's not just going to a golf course and standing there and saying you can hit the ball now. It's much more.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a responsibility for traditional health and safety, but also you've taken some responsibility to ensure the emotional safety of people, the right sort of attitude out there. And it sounds like you're bringing a bit of the gospel with you when you show up to the golf course every day, Jerry. So.
Well, I would definitely hope that that's part of it.
Thank you for that. So the golf courses have been open for a little while now, but we're just now talking about reopening the church for corporate worship. There was an email that went out earlier this week, and so Jerry, as one of our church wardens, and Father Jesse as our incumbent, tell us a little bit more about what the plans are for reopening. I understand the tentative plan is to aim for September 13th, and there'll be some changes for sure, but I think that's something that everybody's been looking forward to for a while now, so it's good to see this date now approaching.
It certainly is, and it's a great feeling to anticipate that worship that we're going to have, gathered in-person worship, being able to celebrate our faith and to worship God in word and sacrament. We, of course, for these past several months have been on what the Provincial House of Bishops has called a Eucharistic fast. And I don't know about you, but I'm starving. I can't wait to get back to the Lord's table and to be able to celebrate the sacraments of the New Covenant. Again, it's so central to who we are as Anglican Christians to worship God in that way. Now, many people will know that the diocesan guidelines have kept us in this worshiping space, and that was a very deliberate decision that was made back in the spring by the Ontario House of Bishops, and then seconded by the diocesan Bishop of Toronto and the area bishops, that September 13th would be the earliest possible reopening date. I know I've had a number of questions over the past several months with regard to the provincial guidelines. We will be following the diocesan guidelines, which take into account all of the recommendations from public health officials and the government of Ontario, and actually go a step beyond in a number of instances in terms of what we'll be doing to ensure that we are worshiping in a way that is both reverent and also as safe as possible for those who are gathered. There are a number of details that can be read about the guidelines. They're on the website of the diocese, toronto.anglican.ca, in full. And if you're on our parish mailing list, if you regularly receive emails from us, you will have received a letter from me and from the wardens. Mine is more of a pastoral letter, but the warden's letter goes into some details about what you can expect with regard to the guidelines and how they'll be applied specifically here at St. John's. This is unprecedented. Of course, there's a word we've heard more in 2020, I think, than at any other time in my life up to this point. But we are working assiduously, very, very hard to make sure that we have these guidelines in place so that everybody can worship God as safely as possible. What it's going to require, of course, is a learning period. There's going to be a learning curve for all involved, including those of us who are in some ways marshaling and organizing these new protocols and procedures. And there's also going to be a learning curve for those who are coming to worship. We just ask that everybody, as Jerry talks about in his ministry on the golf course, perhaps there's a neat sort of dovetailing here We simply ask that everybody undertake these measures in a spirit of generosity and mutual love and charity, and realize that though some of these measures will seem foreign to us, particularly in the worshiping space, some of them may even seem onerous to us. But what we are undertaking in these acts by which we protect one another from disease, these are acts of Christian charity and love, an act of mercy towards one's neighbor. Now, sorry, Shane, go ahead.
I was going to ask, well, what should we say to people who are not in a position to be able to come back to the church building yet, or who are just uncomfortable with that? What do we say to those members of our congregation?
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that, and I was just going to say that. As I said in my pastoral letter, if you read it, and as has been clear throughout from our bishops, and I think even in the preamble to the guidelines itself, no person is required to attend in-person worship. This is not a religious requirement. Your soul is in no jeopardy on account of not coming to church because you don't feel safe doing so. Please know that. And please know also that I am pledging to you, and I have pledged in that letter that I wrote, that we will be continuing to offer some form of online worship indefinitely. So I think one of the great blessings and one of the silver linings around the great dark cloud of this pandemic has been our ability and our realization that opening up into the digital space has been a huge boon to our ministry and witness. It's been a way to connect with folks who have not previously worshiped at St. John's, folks who have not worshiped at St. John's in some time, people from the broader community, and people really from around the world. So I'm committed to offering some form of online worship. It may not look precisely the same as the spiritual communion services that we've been doing, but I'd also like to see varied offerings that we can have going forward to increase our online footprint. And I'm so grateful for all of the help and support that I've received from people like you, Shane, in bringing this worship to our parish and to the wider community. And I'm also deeply grateful for the very many notes and emails and phone calls that I've received talking about how people have connected with God in a new way through this online worship. So that's something that I want to see continue.
Great. Thank you. I know there's been many people who've been contributing to holding our community together in God's love in the midst of this pandemic. And I also know, however, that a great portion of that burden in our congregation has been laid upon our church wardens and deputy church wardens and on you, Jesse. So on behalf of the congregation, I'd just really like to thank you, all the church wardens and Jesse, for, carrying us through this time and getting us to this point. And I know there's more work to be had. So I know we all appreciate that very much. And thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm glad that you've had some opportunity for some enjoyment this summer, because that's always important.
Well, thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Shane.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.